Well, good morning, Minister. Last day for us. Last day for you. Welcome to Budget Estimates Committee hearings here with LegCo. I invite you to introduce the members of your team at the table, and if you bring others forward, introduce those when you do. Our schedule, so people know when they're getting a break, we'll go till about 11, then have a break for about 15 minutes and try and finish primary industries and water before that time, and come back to inland fisheries, and then move to Minister for Women before lunch, and then disability services and prevention of family violence after that.
Yep.
Okay. So, and I also invite you to make an opening statement if you wish in regard to this portfolio area.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would like to introduce to my left Ms Deirdre Wilson. Deirdre is the Deputy Secretary, Primary Industries and Water, and also at the table we have Catherine Murdoch, who's the General Manager, Agriculture and Water, and my amazing team who were with me till late yesterday, and it's lovely to have such support here today as well. I do have some opening comments that I would like to make. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the original owners and continuing custodians of the lands and the waters that we meet on and that we have the privilege to call home, and pay my deepest respect to elders past and present. Thank you, Chair, very much for the opportunity to provide an update on our commitment and progress in our primary industries and water sectors, which I'm incredibly proud to be the Minister. We've been working hard with industry and stakeholder groups to build upon Tasmania's enviable position in both agriculture and fisheries, but also in protecting and enhancing our natural assets and waterways. Tasmania's primary producers continue to punch above their weight, investing in sustainable growth and fostering innovation and value-added production. The government is supporting these sectors by investing more than $46 million in primary industries, marine and water resources, and a further $37 million to reinforce our strong borders and biosecurity measures. The management of Tasmania's water resources is of interest to all Tasmanians, as healthy rivers underpin the state's economy, environment and way of life. We continue to implement projects under our rural water use strategy that are enhancing our understanding and management of water resources, reviewing our policy setting and strengthening collaboration between water managers. Building on our investment into the rural water use strategy, this budget includes an investment of $600,000 to progress the modernisation of the state's water information management system. To ensure our agricultural history continues to prosper, we need to ensure our biosecurity practices are world-leading. This budget provides $2.59 million for the Emergency Animal Disease Risk Fund to ensure we are prepared for and can respond to risks at our borders. The budget also provides an additional $1.4 million over 2 years to extend the Weed Action Fund, which tackles serious weeds that impact on valuable agricultural land and the natural environment. The latest Tasmanian Agri-Food Scorecard shows the sector is worth $2.34 billion and the state's overall agri-food value rose to $3.52 billion in 2020-21. The government is investing in industry-driven agricultural research with a further $2 million for the Agricultural Innovation Fund over the next 2 years. Investment in these industry-backed projects is a significant boost for the state's agricultural research, development and extension capability, which is central to the government's target to deliver the productivity gains needed to sustainably grow the value of Tasmanian agriculture to $10 billion by 2050. I note that today is World Oceans Day, so it's fitting that we will be discussing our sustainable marine resources. Maintaining our waterways for commercial and recreational fishing remains a focus of this government. We've continued to build on the more than $10 million of support provided to the fisheries and aquaculture sectors as they dealt with the effects of COVID. We're delivering a range of programs across wild fishery, recreational, aquaculture sectors that are realising positive outcomes for our unique marine resources and those that rely on them. This year, and over the forward estimates, we've allocated a further $7.3 million in targeted investment across this sector to continue this good work. from extending the control program of the long-spined urchin Centrostephanus to supporting the important Stay Afloat program for commercial fishers to the continuation of the East Coast Rock Lobster Translocation program. Importantly, this budget also provides targeted funding to support sustainable sea fishing in Tasmania, and $1 million has been allocated over 2 years to support a flathead recovery program to rebuild stocks, undertake research and provide targeted fisher education program in partnership with TARFISH, Tasmanian Association for Recreational Fishing. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to make some opening comments, and I'm now happy to answer questions on any of the above matters for the primary industries and water portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll work through line by line, so we'll start with primary industry. We do that in a civilised manner here. So line 2.1. So I'll lead off with a question in relation to the commitment to grow the value of the agricultural sector tenfold to $10 billion by 2050. I know that the most recent scorecard is 2021, and is there an updated version available for staff? Because if it is, it'd be helpful to actually have something to compare. And because I note, like footnote 3 in the budget papers indicates that we're behind the target, and this is confirmed in at least this version, in the 2020-21 version of the scorecard. So the question relates then to, are we getting on target, and what are the reasons for below anticipated growth, and particularly by sector?
So the figures that you have there, Chair, are the latest figures. The new scorecard will come out in November of this year.
It's only every 2 years then?
Beg your pardon?
It's only every 2 years, is it, when it comes out?
I might throw
through you, Minister.
Our Deputy Secretary.
What happens is that there is what we do is we put out the scorecard, and then we'll often have an insights document that we put out in between as a report. There is, and always has been since the inception of the scorecard, a lag in the data. That's because we do rely on ABARES, ABS and other data. Having said that, because we've been doing this over, as you're really well aware, because you've asked questions in the past about this, over many years, it does demonstrate the trends in agriculture, and we see it as incredibly valuable. In terms of whether we're meeting the targets, I believe last year that the gross value of agricultural production grew by 9% to $2.34 billion in 2020-21, which puts the government's on target. Through you, Minister.
Yeah.
So is that like across all sectors, or are there some sectors doing better than others? I'm just wondering if you can get a bit of a sector breakdown here.
Yep, page 6 of your...
Or I could just go through.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Okay, so the latest edition of the Agri-Food Scorecard shows that 2021 certainly was an exceptional year, and as the Deputy Secretary mentioned, there was a 9% growth to $2.34 billion, which does confirm that we are on track to reach the AgriVision 2050 target. So pasture-based industries accounted for around 2/3 of farm gate value due to favourable seasonal conditions and access to irrigation. The high livestock prices and a record milk production of 961 million litres, underpinning growth in farm gate value. Dairy was our highest value agricultural category. It did decrease by 3% to $490 million as a slightly lower Tasmanian milk price offset the record milk production volumes. The farm gate value of meat increased by 8% to $665 million in 2021. That would have been, with high livestock prices continuing. The scorecard, of course, also tracks more than just agriculture. Do you want I've got more information if you want.
If you give it to us all now, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So the state's overall agri-foods value, which includes $1.18 billion seafood industry, so that grew by 9% to $3.52 billion. The packed and processed value of food was $5.62 billion in 2021. That was up by 7% on the previous year. Disruptions to international trade and freight services due to COVID-19 impacted food exports, with the value falling to $874 million. However, 2020-21 was still the highest year on record for value after 2019 and 2020.
That's it. I noticed the TFGA were at a media release saying they weren't happy with the budget, the lack of support for farmers. Obviously, according to your information there, all sectors of dairy prices went back a little bit in terms of beef, but they were still the biggest sector. I'm just interested in why they would say that they needed more support right now when it is all growing fairly well. Obviously, things change, and where the patterns can change, and we may be heading to a more challenging period for them. But do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I certainly can. I'm aware of the Tasmanian Farmers and Graziers comments around the state budget. It was good to have those conversations with the chair and also with the CEO, who...
After they put out the release or before?
Well, I speak to them very regularly, but I made contact with them before they put out their media release, and made it very clear that the priority in this budget was around health and housing, and they could appreciate that there were cuts right across the board. It wasn't just focused on them. They know that this government is a firm supporter of our farmers and always will be. We'll continue to work with them, of course, on their priorities. We value the enormous contribution our primary producers make, not only to our economy but also to the social and environmental fabric of our communities. And, we make no apology as a government for prioritising that record spending on those key services, as I mentioned, being health, housing and indeed education. And I think it's important to say, and this was part of the discussions that I had with the TFGA, which they also acknowledged, that this benefits all Tasmanians when you have, focus on those key services, regardless of whether you work in whatever industry that you might work in right across, rural and regional Tasmania. So we do continue to strongly invest in this sector, especially through innovation, and in the 23-24 state budget it provides an extra $2 million for the highly successful Agricultural Innovation Fund, which I'm pleased to say the TFGA themselves has recognised as vital for the future. The TFGA has also come out publicly in support of our additional $2.59 million in funding for the protection of the state's agricultural industry through biosecurity measures. The peak body also welcomed the $500,000 allocated to support apiary biosecurity, fees, with future employment of another apiary officer to protect the state against any introduced diseases that can have, critical impact on our pollination services, keeping in mind that we've seen the incursion of varroa mite in New South Wales, so that is in our country, and we have to be very careful in that space, which we certainly are being. Our continued upgrades to the Freer Farm Agriculture Centre of Excellence at the Burnie TasTAFE campus, with a further $1.5 million in the budget. That is obviously through Minister Ellis with skills and training, but has an impact on the primary industry sector. And also in this budget, there's an additional $600,000 over 2 years to fund a business case and a detailed concept plan to modernise the water information management system. And that's going to inform the next stage of development of this project, and which is, really important. I did mention the $1.4 million in my opening comments around tackling the state's serious weed problem through the Weed Action Fund, and there's also the allocation of an additional $255,000 for the Land Care Action Program, which contributes to maintaining sustainable agriculture. There's also the obvious investment that we're making into irrigated water, which we know is absolutely a key strategy to reaching that target of $10 billion. And our commitment to irrigation development has been maintained with an investment of an additional $9.3 million, taking the state's commitment to $118 million for existing projects, as well as funding for continued investment for investigations by TAS Irrigation. So, you know, this budget is preparing Tasmania for the future. We are a really strong advocate for this industry. I do accept that the TFGA, made numerous requests through their budget submission. They weren't all taken into account because, as I say, there was a clear focus in this budget around those other services, which make a big impact on families regardless of what industry you may be in.
So one of the things I hear from the prime producers in my electorate, and I'm sure others who've got rural electorates would have, is the access to housing for prime producers. So when you talked about the focus of the budget perhaps to focus more on health, housing and education, as you said, but housing is a critical barrier to employment in our primary producers, in dairy and attracting workers in. So was there any comment around that? I'm just interested in, do they not see that as an issue for them? And if they do, how are you working to support them to sort of access or work with Homes Tasmania now to ensure that housing is built where it's needed? But we sort of think that housing needs to be in the towns and cities where the majority of people live, but there's a real pressure point in getting workers into these agricultural areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's skilled agricultural. The shortage, of workers has been a real issue, but we know that there needs to be housing for them, and this is, a planning issue as well. That I know has been addressed with the Planning Minister. I have had numerous conversations with farmers, the same as you obviously have been, and we absolutely recognise the challenges in finding accommodation for workers. The workers' accommodation needs to be considered as part of normal agribusiness workforce planning, especially where businesses rely on a surge of workforce for peak seasonal activities that can be predicted from year to year. Tasmanian farm businesses may be eligible to apply for the government's Agri-Growth Loan Scheme for capital to purchase or build worker accommodation, where the accommodation contributes to productivity gains, and also, of course, where it meets local council requirements. When it comes to these sorts of issues, this is something, or one of the many issues that are discussed at the National Agricultural Ministers meetings, because this isn't an issue that is, just an isolated issue here in Tasmania. We're seeing these issues right across Australia, so it certainly is front and centre of our thinking and of our conversations that we've been having.
Do you have any direct interaction with Homes Tasmania regarding this issue?
Yeah, well, always, as part of my role as Agricultural Minister, there's the opportunity to advocate and to ensure that this is, in the consideration and the minds of the Housing Minister. And so, there's always that opportunity to have discussions with him.
I think we need to talk to Homes Tasmania because they're the now statutory body, or whatever they're called these days, PNFC, that sits outside of the general government area now. And if they don't know what's needed to directly... I'll just move on. Last year we spoke about the impacts of climate change. We've talked about the impacts of COVID, but we haven't really talked about the impacts of climate change on the agriculture sector, and obviously our fisheries, which we'll come to later.
Yeah.
I know the expansion of the Tasmanian Farm Business Resilience Program has been designed and developed by farmers for farmers, according to the local media reports. The program is noted to build on farm resilience and preparedness to managing the risks to sustainable production, the business competitiveness. So where does the state funding commitment come from in the budget? Where is it actually identified? I couldn't actually find it directly in the budget.
No, through you, Minister. It's in our general primary industries allocation.
It's not a separate allocation, it's within that budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Through you, Minister.
All right, so how will this be delivered in sectors beyond the dairy sector? Well, obviously, it's been, initially I think it was rolled out for the dairy sector, but how will it be delivered in other sectors, and how will the outcomes be measured from it?
And there was I guess you would call it a pilot program in the dairy industry, which was where...
Dairy Tas, right?
Dairy Tas, yeah, which is where it started. It was really successful. The feedback from Dairy Tas was really positive. So we felt it would be beneficial to roll that out and have a further expansion of that. So the way that it works is that it's a learning opportunity for farmers, so they can actually access learning opportunities, and I think it's a very small contribution on their behalf. About $500 will result in up to $9,000 worth of support in being able to look at how can they manage potential risks. Those risks might be coming through climate change, and how can they better look at their business plans, their farm business plans, to ensure that they are planning for any risks that could be coming their way. So
where are you rolling it out to? Like which sectors?
Through you, Minister.
Yeah.
The Department is rolling out a key initiative, which is the Farm Business Resilience Program, which is up to $4 million of combined Australian and Tasmanian government funding. So the Tasmania's financial commitment is up to 1.748 million. Got a very precise number there.
Based on a ratio with the federal government money, or how was that arrived at?
It was based on a project plan and a proposal for a quite integrated a program of works.
Oh.
So our initial target is for 300 farming businesses to participate in the Farm Business Resilience Program. You're right, we started with, as the Minister has indicated, we started with a pilot program delivered by Dairy Tas, utilising our Farm Our Plan framework, and a total of 18 dairy farmers from 13 farms were involved in the pilot. As I said, a program implementation plan followed from that, which has been recently signed with the Australian Government. That sets out the target to get the additional farm businesses engaged. 450 has been...
The other sectors, you mean?
The other sectors, yeah. So on the 3rd of June, NRE Tas advertised a request for tenders for industry groups and service providers, and the Minister promoted that to roll out the program to other industry sectors. And we're looking for the broader rollout to commence from July 2023 over the next 2 years. The design process involved engagement with a farmers reference group, who recommended the delivery model based on cross-commodity and regional farmer groups combined with one-on-one coaching. So the farmers will be guided through a standard planning framework of strategic business management, risk and opportunity analysis, natural resource management, personal and social resilience, succession planning, making decisions and putting the plan into action. It will also have a focus on planning for climate change, sustainable irrigation and safe farming practices, and that will also involve Work Safe Farming program, which obviously we also partner with Justice on. Having been involved over many years on various programs, this design is really integrated, and we're very hopeful that our promotion means that we'll get a good cross-section of farmers engaged in the program.
So the question that you haven't...
Just add one more thing, sorry, Chair. That one of the real benefits of the way this program is that it's flexible. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So it's an opportunity for farmers from all different areas of working in all different spaces to actually have this program that accommodates what their needs are. So it's got that flexibility in it.
So, I asked this in many other areas, not just here. But we can throw as much money as we like at things if we don't measure the outcomes. How are we going to measure the outcomes from this, and how will it be reported?
Can I throw it to you?
Yes, through you, Minister. My understanding is through our program approach, evaluation will be part of what we will need to do. I'm not sure if we need to bring Mr. Bastock to the table to talk that. Yes, would it be right if we bring...
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. Ashley Bastock is the Director of Agriculture.
You what? You need it. Yes.
It's all about performance outcomes,
Yeah.
not outputs.
That's right, through you, Minister. Part of the program design has actually included engaging TIA to do parallel social research, and it's part of the monitoring and evaluation and learning component that's required as part of the program. And so they will be working with the Dairy Tas, who the Minister said are already underway with implementing it with the other service providers that we get to work with farmers about what were the learnings, what was picked up, what changed, and how do we design. And as part of that is trying to go from outputs, as you say, to outcomes, what's been the change. So that's
Trying to, or are we actually going to get there?
well, the intent is to try, but it's easier to count.
I know it is. That's why
outcomes.
Every
Right.
performance
But that's
information
why,
in this is just output.
Minister, the social research side of things is really important to what we're doing to see if we can capture that learning. And what's that meant for a farmer, what it might have meant at an industry level.
Surely you would hope that you'd see some measurable change. We're dealing with mitigation of climate change or other risks. Surely that would be able to be captured, how a landowner or primary producer has adapted their management, surely?
Yeah, through you, Minister. To go back half a step, the first thing is to make sure that there is a appropriate plan in place. So it can be that people already have plans, property management plans, farm water access plans. So the first measurable, so I admit it's an output, is to actually make sure we take them through a planning process. But as part of that, then what does that mean? And that's where the work of TIA is to look at that social research. And the aim of the program is to go from, it's actually better decisions more often is really what it's about, and that's why the Commonwealth are funding it, rather than when we find ourselves in a drought and we're into then crisis support and the like, and we've been there before. So one of the intents is hopefully better planning up front, more, better decisions
better
more
resilience.
often. Yeah, and that's exactly right. That goes to the heart of resilience. So, but that
Maybe
is
the outcomes be less requests for help when we're in the drought anyway. I don't imagine that will probably happen either. But so the TIA work on this is, where is that funded from? Is that part of the funding itself? Is that part of that package?
Yeah, it's actually part of the program.
Right.
In parallel.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I want to ask a little bit just further on climate changes and the impacts of climate change. What specific advice and or actions are being taken by the department to address the impacts of climate change and to mitigate the increased risk to the agricultural sector, particularly, as you mentioned earlier, Minister, the fisheries? We'll come more to fisheries later, but I just want to talk broadly in terms of climate and the impact of change.
Okay. So climate-ready agriculture is one of the focus areas of our competitiveness of Tasmania's agriculture for the 2050 White Paper. Accordingly, the government committed to supporting agricultural producers to reduce their emissions, adapt to and be prepared for the impacts of climate change and leverage opportunities for growth. So the two key initiatives of the government, one we've already discussed, being the Farm Business Resilience Program. The other is the Carbon Farming Advice Rebate Pilot Program. And these programs complement a range of climate change measures, including our renewable energy goals, net zero emissions by 2030 target, and recent amendments to the Climate Change State Action Act of 2008. But, obviously I don't want to go into the Minister for Climate Change area, but I can give you some information, some more information regarding carbon farming, which is one of those two key initiatives. So the $250,000 carbon farming advice rebate pilot program, that was a 2021 election commitment. The $250 was originally allocated to the Tasmania Climate Change Office and then transferred to NRE Tasmania, so that we follow, because I know you like to follow things through the budget papers. The program provides primary producers with rebates of up to $10,000 for advice sought about the costs and benefits of accessing carbon credits, auditing requirements and on-ground actions that are eligible for carbon credits. Now, the rebates are available for $1 for each $1 spent, so dollar matched on eligible advice, and individual rebates are limited to that maximum amount of $10,000. The program will remain open until all the funds are expended. I'm advised there are 20 approved advisors under the program who can actually provide that advice. So as at the 13th of April 2023, 5 producers had applied.
Know where they are in the state?
I might ask the Deputy Secretary, but I'll just finish telling you about the program. So 5 producers have applied and been approved for a rebate of advice, and $50,000 has been committed. To encourage the uptake of the program, an additional $10,000 was transferred for the provision of 2 statewide workshops in conjunction with TIA in 21-22, and there were over 120 participants attending those workshops. Other recent promotional activities include Agri-Growth attending 2 Landcare Tasmania environmental markets and carbon farming events, and carbon farming was a feature of the NRE Tas display at AgFest, and it was good to see the interaction that was had there. Due to the feedback, the stakeholder feedback that we have received, the primary producer guidelines were updated in March of this year to clarify the roles of producers and advisors, as well as make it clearer as to what was eligible to claim for the rebate. Now, I'm just checking the figures I've got here. I don't think there is a breakdown here.
Through Minister, no, I don't believe I've got that.
Can we get that? I'm just interested in where these people, and maybe there's I talk to a lot of farmers on King Island about these sort of matters too. I don't know whether anyone from there has applied.
Just let me check.
My understanding is they're statewide, but I don't have that information.
We don't have that information here on hand, but we will attempt to get that for you before the end of this session.
Otherwise, we can put it as a question on notice to you.
I think we'll be able to get it before the end of the
that'd be
session.
great.
We'll certainly try to do that.
Does anyone else want to jump in? Nick?
Yeah.
Then I'll continue
Just-
to...
We have
That's mine.
you're right.
Good. Thanks, Minister. And as you've already alluded to, it's been a pretty good year on our dairy farms around Tasmania, and there is work, I understand, being done to plan for the future in that sector and keep it ticking over. I'm just wondering if you're able to provide some information about what the government is doing in the dairy sector, particularly to support its long-term sustainability and issues arising around climate change.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the question on this really important topic. Our dairy industry, as I've said, is one of our great success stories, worth a massive $490 million at Farmgate in 2021, which we saw in the Agri-Food Scorecard. The recent Agribusiness Insights report shows the dairy industry has continued to perform well with increased milk production for the 7 months to January of 23, and they had quite a strong autumn season. This is off the back of an increase in the value of exports and high record prices. Our dairy industry makes up 10.8% of the country's total milk volume. It's no wonder, I read only last week, that business confidence among Tasmanian dairy farmers is actually among the highest that we have in the nation. The Tasmanian Government is pleased to be supporting this valuable sector to continue adapting to a changing climate and maintaining its long-term sustainability. It is great to announce today that a new $243,000 two-year project to be led by Dairy Tas will assist dairy farmers to better understand their role in adapting to climate change and being sustainable in their practice. Dairy Tas will support farmers to consider the use of management of dairy effluent. Excuse me, Chair. Look at options to reduce fertiliser and methane emissions and to understand their greenhouse gas emissions. The project also contributes to the Dairy Australia National Soils Nutrients and Irrigation programs that support reducing greenhouse gas emissions on farm. The project directly contributes to the supporting climate-ready agriculture priority in the Tasmanian Government's Competitiveness of Tasmanian Agriculture to 2050 White Paper. And the project also aims to help reach the Tasmanian Government's newly legislated emissions reduction target for the state of net zero emissions or lower from 2030. This project is in addition to another partnership that we recently announced with Dairy Tas for a program which will give farmers the tools that they need, as we've just spoken about, to manage risk going forward, including adapting to climate change and improving the resilience of their farming businesses. Dairy Tas has successfully run that pilot, as we've spoken about. It's part of more than $4 million of the Tasmanian Farm Business Resilience Program, and of course that's under the Australian Future Drought Fund. This program is being rolled out widely.
Probably covered this already.
Yeah, but we certainly do want to encourage farmers to take up the advantage of this, and this is going to really secure them moving forward in a sustainable manner, but also to give them a competitive edge, because we know that the world is watching and that the world wants to be consuming products that we know are ethically grown and grown sustainably. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, can you provide for the committee an estimated total expenditure for this financial year, or figures that you have to date at least, for any consultants engaged through your department, advertising and marketing, travel expenses, and ministerial and senior executive salaries, please?
Certainly. I'll just...
Yes.
That's fairly operational. I'm going to pass that to the
Thank you.
Deputy
And
Secretary.
I'll
Did
just
you get
go.
all that down?
Yes, I did. Oh,
She should have been
we've-
expecting it,
yes,
I reckon,
I was.
after you.
And I've got
I've got a piece of paper.
And I've got everything tagged this time so I can find it, because it was
Thank
just
you.
awful yesterday, sorry. So in terms of summary of consultancies, above 10,000 awarded as at the 31st of March 2023 by Prime Ministry's water portfolio. There were 10 consultancies, $700,396. So that's one. Yep, let's keep on going. In terms of travel, as at the 31st of March 2023, total expenditure for intrastate and interstate travel and accommodation was approximately $948,000. Yep. So
There's a lot for interstate. There's no international travel in that.
no. Well, that's for the whole of the agency. So for PIW, it's 403,000.
Okay.
Yeah. Apologies. I just went to I did give the full figure yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
So was there any international travel at all?
there could have been in PIW, but do you know if that's one for?
Those two went to New Zealand, weren't they?
1,400. So the whole department for international travel was 1,400. And I don't have that breakdown if that was a PIW expense. Advertising expenditure as at 31st of March, PIW was 103,000, approximately 103,000. So that's those. Yep, got those. SES salaries, we've got that.
Don't have the gender breakdown of your staff while you're there, but we might go straight to that after you do the
Yeah, I do
salaries.
have that.
across PIW.
Yeah, Chris POW. I'll do SCS first. So SCS salaries, about 4,568,690,000. Did you get that?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
And our ministerial staffing, we've got that. We updated it, so thank you. No payments have been made for ministerial staff in this reporting period for the 1st July 2022 to 31st of March 2023. There is an agreed funding arrangement for one advisor for POW at a cost of $136,000 per annum.
Thank you. I feel like we've missed one.
Advertising was our next one.
You did that one.
I did do advertising.
Sorry.
Thank you, Minister, though. It's good that we're keeping
breakdown that
the gender breakdown.
Yeah.
Yep, so I'll get to that. So you want the gender breakdown for PIW?
Yes.
Through you, Minister?
Across band levels if you can, not just the high level figure.
Yeah, I know, said that. So, excuse you, through you, Minister. Across band levels, yes, okay. So, gender. So I'll start with, thank you. So through you, Minister, can you just go through which one you want, then I'll make sure I've got the right thing. So I've got gender diversity by agency, I've got it by business unit, and by classification, and those are three that you want, through you, Minister. So in terms of the whole agency...
You can do the whole agency, the high level, and perhaps provide the other information in the table.
That would be fine, yes.
Rather than reading out 10,000
yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah, that'd be good.
That's fine. We've got 1,575 staff as of March 2023. There were 769 male, which is 48.83%. Female was 804, which is 51.05. We had 2 undisclosed at 0.12. So, as noted, that means with our female to male ratio, slightly more females, probably reflective of the community. By classification, as at 31st of March, we could, for you, Minister, do we table that? Or?
Look, I think we should table. I'm more than happy to
read it in if you wish.
This is just the classification if you want to, or we can...
Let's break it down by band.
It's by numbers, female, male, undisclosed, grand total, and percentage of females.
If you could table that,
Yes.
I'd be interested to know whether you've identified any gender pay gap through this. And it's hard to know without looking at it as whether it's even likely. So if you could table that, and then the question then follows, is there an identified gender pay gap here?
Yeah.
Through you, Minister, I did put some thought into this. Because we're paid at band classifications based on a merit process, that means that if you're at a band 4, male or female, you're paid.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's how many women are higher up the tree?
Yes, and in that case, we do have information on that we can quickly go to, because so from band 7, which won't take too long if with your indulgence, which is around when we get into supervisory roles, there's 62 female, 69 male, which means obviously we've got 47% female. At band 8, there's 24 female, 32% male, which is 43% female. At band 9, there's 2 female, 7 males, which is 22%.
So we do have a gender pay gap going on.
At that, but at SES, we've got 14 female, 10 male, which means 58% women.
Can we work out what the gender pay gap is across the department then?
We were going to at least give you, through you, Minister, we'll be able to provide basically a total of the salaries paid male and female at each band level. Whether that demonstrates a gender pay gap in the sense of how the private sector talk about it in terms of when people come in at starting level and in the senior executive, as I said, I think that it's a slightly different scenario in the state service, and you've gone to the heart of it, which is how many people are at senior levels. What I can tell you, having been in the agency for many, many years, is that these figures in terms of female representation at the senior levels are the highest that I've seen.
I don't deny
highest
that.
I've seen. and and with 51% of females in the agency, and that's from a has shifted. My recollection was we were sitting at about 33% at senior levels, 36% some time ago in some of these senior band levels, and we're now sitting at 47, 43, 58. The band 9, I should explain, there's 9 of those, and there does seem to be a discrepancy there. Those band 9s are specialist positions. That's not to indicate that women can't be specialists. It just happens to be that because they've been specialised roles through the normal recruitment.
To wash through, I understand
the normal
that,
recruitment process.
Yeah.
It just happens to fall that way.
If we're going to be serious about gender equality, I know this is your next another portfolio minister, but we do need to get a benchmark in time. I know it's certainly better than what it has been in the past, without a shadow of a doubt, but we do need measures. Yeah.
And, to be honest, I'm actually really proud of this. And when you see that, that top level at SES where you have 58% are women, I think we are seeing gender equality across this department. There are some areas where, the band 9, which are the specialist positions that the Deputy Secretary's spoken about, sometimes you can't always have gender equality because the experts that you need may be male, may be female. You have to get the right person for the job. But when I look at this, these classifications, it ranges from the cadet positions all the way through to SES, and there is gender equality across this department, which is
Most bands,
as it should be.
Through you, Minister, if that's all right. We have developed terms of measures, though. Appreciate what you're saying, because sometimes these figures can shift, and you've really got to watch what's happening through the lower levels in terms of both diversity, recruitment and gender. So the agency's developed a 3-year Belonging NRE TAS action plan, which brings a range of actions together to develop a more inclusive and collaborative environment. But it's about all employees feeling a sense of belonging. We've engaged in initiatives, International Women's Day, NAIDOC Week, Walk Against Elimination of Violence Against Women and Children, and we have an annual rolling diversity calendar that's been developed to promote significant dates and events. And in fact, one of the things that we're finding is that the flexible work arrangements that can be applied now. Some of our frontline service people, they need to be they've got particular rosters, etc. But for many of our other staff, we've got flexible work arrangements, which really does assist with that work-life balance when people, if they choose to, have children, and that keeps women and men, but particularly women, in the workforce.
You have to table that.
And men as well who are caring.
That's right,
both, yeah.
Well,
their
enables men to
children
actually
or-
stay home and look after the children.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes,
How am I supposed to table?
Just give it to me.
okay, that's handy.
Do I need to sign it or date it?
No, just take the table paper.
Were we going to?
Yeah, there's another one.
It is an interesting conversation, because even the line, the band level of specialists,
Yes.
raises questions about how specialists are being sought out, and then potentially there's a deeper question there about people being able to get a specialty and being able to study. So it's certainly something that
Helpful
needs
to see how
constant reflection, I think.
It'd be helpful to see how you're developing the measures, though, because this comes to your other portfolio, Minister, with the gender snapshot. We need to have really robust measures and measures that can be described as well as reported on to be meaningful. Yeah.
We're just getting the other one.
I mean, in fairness, this government has done a good job in increasing the number of women in senior positions and boards and that sort of thing. But there's still, if we want true gender equality, we've still got a little way to go.
The agency.
Well, it's got to be across all levels, not just across boards.
So the table that I have is actually across the whole agency. I just want to seek some advice.
You might just have to fill up itself. We can get one for our portfolio at the end of the session. Yeah, we'll get one for the portfolio.
So this table actually goes across a number of portfolios.
Happy to wait and get
So
a
I think
modified
if
table.
that's okay,
That's fine.
yeah, we'll get
we'll
one
do that.
that's
Yep.
specific for this.
You can table it whenever it's prepared. That's
thank
fine.
you.
Whatever section we're in.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So, okay. I just want to move to another area. Game Services Tasmania provides services to landholders, farmers
Oh,
and
sorry,
hunters.
just before you do, could I just go back to the
yeah.
travel expenses question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, so the international travel, the figure we're given was $1,400. Does that includes the minister's travel, is that right?
Excuse me, please. Sorry, Minister.
Oh, sorry, international travel,
What was the question?
I think so. She's asking about the amount.
Yeah.
the $1,400, does that includes the minister's?
And it was international.
Doesn't it? No, but through you, Minister, that included our expenditure.
Right,
NRA
okay.
TAS.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just had a question about, there was a claim for travel for the Minister for you to travel in January. International travel, $4,303.66 in the disclosures.
Yeah.
What was that trip for?
That
this
was
portfolio?
representing the Premier on a trade mission to New Zealand.
Ah, right. And when was that trade mission?
Just let me check. I'll just have to seek some advice.
Oh, you're fine, thank you.
Trying to remember which kid's birthday I missed to be on the trade mission, but I can't remember if it was them or Andrew.
Can you remember when their birthday is?
Probably not this week. I can't remember anything this week, I think.
So that New Zealand trade mission was from the 31st of July until the 5th of August 2022.
Thank you.
You're right.
Yeah, I have got another question on another matter, but
That's okay.
I'm happy to
You can
come
go, you
back.
go then. Yep.
Did you want more information about the Department International?
No, that's fine, thank you. Let me just get back into my computer. I had a question about the wild deer.
Oh, that's probably what was here. So you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right.
So I understand that federal money was provided for aerial shooting of deer in the walls of Jerusalem. When was the Central Plateau Protected Area included in that program? And did that include any private property on the Central Plateau?
So that is a matter for Parks, the Minister for Parks. I realise that deer plan is in my space, but that was actually a question for the Minister for Parks.
Oh, okay, because
flick
the
that through to
this
the
line item
Committee B.
says, pardon?
Then flick it through to Committee B.
Yeah, okay. All right, just this line item talks about this.
But just on that, I had a question related to deer as well. There was a recent deer cull. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's for
So
parks,
that doesn't
is it?
fall at all under your area, the deer cull?
No, that was through the Minister for Parks.
So can I ask them what the funding, in the footnote it talks about the implementation of a wildfallow deer management? What's that for then, if it's not for the cull?
Yeah, thank you very much for the
That's very
question. I'm going
separate.
to hand that to Ms Murdoch.
Thank you.
Through you, Minister. So in regards to the funding for the implementation of the Wildfallow Deer Implementation Plan, that funding is to deliver, we're working up, so peri-urban deer control programs.
Okay.
We're also implementing the nature conservation deer farming regulations with that funding. We've employed a property-based wildlife management officer to work with farmers to develop wildlife management plans, which includes deer, so that farmers can actually manage those on their property in accordance with their objectives. We also have done a study into the economic value of hunting in Tasmania, which is in draft form. We're working on that project. Ongoing monitoring for deer through the deer scan project, which we encourage everybody to actively participate in. So if you see a deer, get onto the deer scan website and report it. So
Deer scam or scan?
scan.
That's what you're saying.
Definitely deer scan, and we have a series of camera traps out in the field in those areas, particularly. Next week, the team are going down to the Tasman Peninsula to deploy those there, and so that's informing our ongoing population, and obviously we have business as usual core staff who do permitting in regards to deer permits. So that's what that funding is going to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish they'd do the same for cat management in the state, so that people could report feral cats.
I could answer that.
They move pretty far, a bit like deers do too, I suppose. Any other questions on output group 2.1? If not, we'll move to 2.2, supervision of poppy and hemp crops. Mike, thank you. The poppies for you.
Thanks, Minister. And there's not a lot to this one. We heard yesterday about the decrease in the number of licences because of the worldwide trends, which is fine. And there's not a lot of change or fluctuation in the budget figure here, which is good. But you might be able to give us some information. Now that the medicinal cannabis farm has been sold, I'm just wondering what, bought by Blue Buffalo Limited, I think in 2022. I'm just wondering, has the government had any involvement or interaction or communication with that facility?
Sure, I'll just seek some advice on that one.
Not as far as I'm aware. Not as far as I'm aware. No.
Not as far as I'm aware. The advice that I've got is that not as far as I am aware as the Minister, but also from the Department, not as far as they're aware.
I thought that surprises me. I thought that would have been one area that that they would have been involved with or made contact with.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a sizable farm that had been sold on an initiative from the government with medicinal cannabis.
I might ask the Deputy Secretary to comment on
Through
that.
you, Minister, and my broad recollection would be medicinal cannabis would come under the control of the Poisons Act, and the Poisons Act is a matter primarily for the Minister for Health, particularly medicinal cannabis, whereas we regulate under the Industrial Hemp Act, industrial hemp. So that's, and in terms of the sale or otherwise of properties, unless there's a specific interest that we have, we would not have any particular engagement. Yeah, that would be my understanding.
Okay, it's interesting. It's a certified organic farm, so I thought that might have been under this area, but that's fine.
Through you, Minister, certification is not through the agency. It's normally through third-party accreditation bodies. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. I don't think there's any other questions in this area.
A couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might. I'm interested in how many licensed industrial hemp crops there are.
Yes, that's it.
So the number of active commercial licences, so that's growers in given years. I've got a bit of a comparison here. So I'm not going to give you don't need all of these, but in 2017-18 there were 35, in 18-19 49, in 19-20 47, in 20-21 33, and in 21-22 there were 26. The number of commercial licences, noting that licences are issued for up to 5 years, 2017-18 58, 18-19 75, 19-20 89, 20-21 87, and 21-22 84. I've also got hectares, as well. 2017-18 I'm assuming this is 464.
Yeah, that's right.
18-19, 1,361, 19-20, 1,569, 20-21, 1,012, and in 21-22, 711.
So it fluctuates a bit, doesn't it? Yeah. I'm just going a little bit to Mike, but it might be more a matter for the Minister. I don't think, did you ask how many breaches there have been under the Poisons Act?
Yes, so it was the interferences they had was less,
Yeah,
but not under the Poisons
yeah.
Act, yeah.
But there can be other breaches under the Poisons Act in this area. Have there been any breaches?
Through you, Minister, the key thing that the Poppy Advisory Control Board manages is poppy crops. So we don't go beyond that in terms of other breaches of the Poisons Act. So interferences are the key things
That's
that
the only
we
thing
monitor.
that you-
Well, it's the key thing that we monitor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it went from 1.73 to 1.17 or something. It was down.
All right. If there's no other questions on that one, we'll move to 2.3, Water Resources Management. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, yes, please, an update on the status of the rural water use strategy, please, if you would.
Thank you very much for the question. Freshwater underpins the Tasmanian economy, environment and way of life, and it's also a key enabler for this government's vision to grow the value of Tasmanian agriculture to 10 billion by 2050. We're investing in the Rural Water Use Strategy as our blueprint for managing the state's freshwater resources. The strategy will ensure sustainable outcomes for rural water users, communities and the environment, and maintain Tasmania's competitive advantages in a changing climate. So there are currently 12 key projects underway, including initiatives to improve river health, groundwater assessment, to review the science underpinning our water allocation framework, that's including catchment yields, and also water accountability. The strategy also includes the development of a new statewide water quality monitoring program, which will be developed collaboratively with Hydro Tasmania, Tasmanian Irrigation, Taswater, Inland Fisheries Services, Environment Protection Authority and the Department. So these projects are all providing new information to inform Tasmania's future water management arrangements to ensure integrated, fair and efficient use and regulation of our water resources. All projects are currently meeting their project timelines, which is fantastic, and will be formally reported on in August of this year as part of the next report on the strategy. The total investment allocated to deliver current projects under the Rural Water Use Strategy is now $5.08 million, and our government is committing a total of $3.86 million, including an initial $1.5 million over 4 years to implement the River Health Advisory Project, and $535,000 in the 22-23 budget to complete 3 freshwater science projects. The Australian Government is also investing a total of $1.22 million to complete the 3 freshwater science projects, and to support the delivery of these projects, the Department of Natural Resources and Environment Tasmania has employed 8 additional staff. In addition to the Rural Water Use Strategy, the Tasmanian Government is also working with the Commonwealth to negotiate a new national water initiative in 2023.
Thank you, Minister. And, you know, recognising the fact that there are a lot of projects underway and there is a great volume of monitoring and therefore data being fed into the system, I wonder if you could give us some information about the work of the water managers and data custodians group.
Yes, so the Rural Water Use Strategy really is our state's blueprint for managing our freshwater resources for now and also into the future. The Department of Natural Resources and Environment Tasmania established the Water Managers and Data Custodian Working Group in July of 2022 to support implementation of the strategy and to collate and review existing data sets and monitoring programs in the state related to surface and groundwater data. Now, the group consists of representatives from Hydro Tasmania, Tas Irrigation, Taswater, Inland Fisheries Services, Environment Protection Authority and the Department. Management. Specifically, the group is supporting the department to design a new collaborative statewide water quality monitoring program, which is due for release, as I mentioned before, in August. Implementation of a statewide water quality monitoring program will provide a contemporary assessment of the status of the quality of our freshwater resources. It'll inform future water management initiatives and also complements the River Health monitoring program, which is already in place. The group is investigating a range of data sharing and information issues to facilitate the collation and the review of statewide river health and water quality data. The Water Managers and Data Custodians Working Group has also enabled water managers and regulators to discuss issues and generally improve information sharing across government agencies and key stakeholders. It really is quite a good step in the right direction. The Water Managers and Data Custodians Group was instigated by the Rural Water Roundtable, which was established in August of 21, and that was to establish greater communication and collaboration between our water managers and our regulators and, of course, our stakeholders. So the Roundtable provides the government with external perspectives on how rural water use strategy can be delivered and has been a catalyst for two-way communication between water managers, the stakeholders and the regulators. Topics covered by the Rural Water Roundtable include rural water use strategy implementation progress, collaboration and partnerships in waterway management and monitoring, waterway health, climate change and the National Water Initiative, including Aboriginal water interests as well.
I might follow up with one on that. With the quality of water stream flow sites that meet quality assurance standards, a performance indicator on page 156. So I'm just interested in which rivers and streams have been tested around the state for water quality.
So we've got, this is the performance indicator, and it's around stream flow, sufficiency, quality and accuracy. So if you explain that, then I'll just get some information from one of our briefs around what we monitor.
Okay. Just seeking some information to your question, but can I just answer one of your previous questions that I've now got that information on? You asked about the 5 farms that were involved in the carbon farming rebate scheme to date. I can tell you I have one in Dorset, one in Smithton, one in Buckland, one in the Southern Midlands and one in Evandale. Thank you.
So, through you, Minister, just very quickly in terms of the quality of water information performance measure, just to explain, that's about the accuracy of stream flow information.
What, sorry?
Accuracy of stream. It didn't come out quite right, did it? Of stream flow information on an annual basis. So it's about making sure that we've got quality information to understand what's happening in our riverine systems. You've asked about, so we've got continuous river level and river flow data collected at 80 stream gauge stations. Continuous water quality data, pH, turbidity, electrical conductivity, dissolved oxygen and temperature collected at 13 sites, depth of groundwater and groundwater temperature collected at 88 groundwater sites, and collecting spot sample water quality data, pH, turbidity, electrical conductivity, dissolved oxygen and temperature at all 80 stream gauging stations on average 5 times per year and during autumn and spring river health surveys.
Do you have the locations?
We do have locations, but I don't have the full list of 80 on me. 3 units.
Yeah, it's live public data, so we could just get them out.
Is that what you can find on the...
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So that is publicly available. The stream flow water quality and groundwater data that is collected by NRE Tas is available on the NRE Tasmania Water Information Tasmanian web portal. So you can go there to find that, as is the stream flow data from Tas Irrigation and selected Hydro Tasmania sites. So my understanding is that NRE Tas has recently published the latest sampling round results and historical data for 53 long-term river health monitoring sites via that.
Is the Welcome River one of the rivers?
Sorry, can you say that
The
again?
Welcome River one of the rivers?
Yes, I'm being advised that it is.
So can we have some information about how that is, the river health of the Welcome River? I'm not going to look up the site right now because I'm busy sitting here chairing the committee. I'd just like some information on that, because this is the river that has been polluted by dairy operations in that area of Circular Head, and there was also issue with EPA notices. So I'm just interested in how that's going.
Yeah, you are getting very operational, so I'm just going to...
Don't have it.
No, we don't have that detail. We can see what we can get. Why don't we just see what we can quickly pull together by the end of the session? We'll do our best.
So we don't have that detail of information here at the table, but we will attempt to get that information for you before the end of the session. So I'll let you know if we get it, and if you could just ensure that there's time at the end.
And if you don't, we'll write to you so you can provide it later. That's right. It would be helpful too, just in terms of having the information together for the committee, is if you could also produce the list of the 80 rivers and streams that are on that list. Yeah.
I think that would be quite easy to get our hands on that, because it is on that. It is public. So, are you right to? Yeah, we'll do that.
Yep. All right, for sure. Any other questions on the Southport Group? No? If not, we'll move to Marine Resources.
Just wait, Dean. There's a change.
There's a change of
There's a change of personnel. So.
Yes, he's coming. No, I suggested that they just come up. Saves us a bit of time. And you can refer if you wish.
I think so.
Pardon? But you go first.
Will you introduce your new person?
Yes, I will. Chair, I would like to introduce Dr Ian Dutton, who is the General Manager for Marine Resources.
Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, there's a scalefish rules review happening at the moment. Can you tell me about the consultation process and community engagement through that? How's that? Has that happened?
Yeah, it certainly has. It's been quite an extensive community consultation process. It actually just closed on the 5th of June. Now, there's been the standard way that community consultation is done, and people have had the opportunity to send submissions in. But on top of that, we also took a team out around the state, and I will get Dr Dutton to speak to that in a moment in more detail. But the team went out around the state so that people had the opportunity to ask questions and to give feedback directly, which was, really quite fantastic. So we went. We really did go statewide. Obviously at AgFest, there was a big opportunity there, and that was so. The engagement there was pretty phenomenal, actually. There was also an online webinar about depleted species. We had an online webinar for recreational gill nets. We had open consultation in Devonport, Burnie, Smithton, Strawn, and Triabunna. Bicheno, St Helens, Bridport, Launceston, Hobart. Did I already say Smithton? Yeah, I did. Wynyard and Ulverston.
That's very good.
I know. Lucky Stanley. Wynyard, Ulverston, Eaglehawk Neck, Lindisfarne, Dover and Flinders Island as well. We also had information that was sent out to 30,000 stakeholders via email, which was to notify them. That's right, isn't it? Is that the correct? 30,000.
3 Minister, correct, yes, 34.
Yep. And we even had a situation where some of our team unfortunately became unwell, and we had a week where we weren't able to fulfil the commitment that we'd made to some of these communities. So we extended the public consultation by a week to ensure that once our team had recovered, they were actually able to go. We really wanted to make sure that we had a really good statewide coverage, and that there were lots of opportunities, whether it was online or face-to-face, because, you know, people communicate differently, that there was, you know, really wide public consultation around that.
And so were all the scheduled communities done? You noted, obviously, the week that got postponed, they were all covered, though, through that.
Through you, Minister, yes, we did cover all of them. The latter couple, as the Minister indicated, were a little out of sync because of COVID. We actually just deferred a couple of things down the southern part of the state by a few days just to enable us to cover the staffing.
And just following on from that, I know that the Sand Flathead have been, well, as I understand, on the depleting list for almost 10 years, and then in 22 changed to depleted. I'm just wondering what the, not science, but behind that, because it's quite a, if this review is, or the recommendation of the bag limit of 2 comes into place, that takes it down from 20. I understand there's the 10 in place at the moment, but I'm just wondering where that goes from depleting to depleted. Over that, yeah, that's right. Over that 10 years, it's been, it's my understanding that it's been depleting. Some understanding around that.
Excuse me. So it's around biomass. That's how it's actually measured. But I think for that level of technical explanation, I'll ask Dr. Dutton to do that.
Thank you, Minister. There's a couple of measures of stock status around Australia that are used commonly. There's an online app called the Status of Australian Fish Stocks. So in Tasmania, we have 49 stocks that are assessed. 30 of those are currently assessed as sustainable. About 11 are assessed as depleted, including 6 of these species that we've gone out to consult, including, importantly, the sand flathead, because it's such an important iconic species. It really measures a number of measures. But a simple measure is the relative abundance. So when a stock falls below 20% of the naturally occurring biomass, or the volume of the stock, that's when a trigger is initiated, when we really have to take action. The other issue with sand flathead is that if you look at the distribution by size class over time, what we've also got is a fish getting generally smaller. There's very little chance for sand flathead in Tasmania to grow through above its legal limit of 32 centimetres currently. So we're effectively creating
because they get caught.
They get caught, and so the breeding females are out of the population. So we've actually introduced a thing called fishing-induced evolutionary change, where because of recreational fishing, we're actually forcing ourselves to have smaller and smaller fish. So it's very uncommon now to catch sand flathead. As I grew up northwest coast, east coast, catching fish routinely standard, I wouldn't take home anything less than 40 centimetres. Now I'm taking home 32 centimetre fish, which is really not as good a fish to be taking home.
Not at the moment, though, Dr. Dutton, because it's 35.
Is he breaching the law already?
I haven't been fishing under the interim rules.
It's been too busy.
But
Just on that, are you still on that?
No,
Yeah, just in relation to that, so where is the process at now?
So we've closed, as Minister indicated through Minister, the public submissions closed. We had a very significant response on Monday night. Our team are rapidly analysing those. It takes a lot of work to go through those submissions. I might add, in addition to the recreational consultation, which we've just talked about, there's also a commercial component of this. We've consulted particularly around calamari, for example, and in addition to all those public meetings, we also had one-on-one or small group meetings with more than 50 individual commercial fishers around the state in parallel with all hence the Smithton visits, for example.
So how many fishermen, calamari fishermen or fisher people in Smithton did you actually meet with? Because there were some who didn't know what was going on. I think we've talked about this in the previous forum.
When you say there were some of them who didn't know what was going on, do you mean about the opportunity
The opportunity
to...
for one-to-one meetings, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we did get that information to you in that briefing that was held. We got you the information about
I'm interested how many people were actually
the
spoken
numbers.
to in Smithton who are calamari fishermen particularly.
Ian could talk in general because we know approximately how many fishes. So if you're happy to, well, okay, we can see where. Do you have numbers?
Do you have the numbers?
I don't have the numbers on me, Minister, but I could quickly just text my staff for that number.
We could try and take it in this session for you if you'd like, Minister.
Yeah.
Okay, if you would like some of that information, are you just looking at the West Coast, or do you want the breakdown of the entire?
No, I'm particularly interested in the Smithton, the fisher people from Smithton who are commercial fishers of calamari, who notionally had an opportunity to have one-to-one meetings under the framework that was discussed in the briefing that we had. How many individuals were actually had meetings
Yeah, that's
with the
fine.
departmental people?
We'll seek to get that information for you before the end of the session.
Thank you.
No, can I just go back to I just want to try and understand the process of going from a 20-bag limit to a proposed 2-bag limit over that time. I just want to understand where it goes from depleting, like the Chair said, where's that line? I'm just trying to get a rationale about why it wouldn't go to, say, in 2018 when it's depleting, and you mentioned about the 20% level. So if we get to I have no idea, 40%, why wouldn't we say then, right, it's a 10-bag limit? Because I just think there's, when you talk about recreational fishing, it's going to affect a fair few now. If it goes down to 2, and I understand the reasons around that, but you're talking about a small percentage now, aren't you, from a 35
What a way
to
to get to this point to go from 2 to
that's right.
20 to 2 bag limit.
So I will refer to Dr. Dutton, but can I start by saying the species in 2015 was identified as depleting. At that stage there was a bag limit of 30. That was cut down to 20. There was, in the short term, quite a good response to that. There was some improvement that was seen initially, but unfortunately that didn't continue, that trend didn't continue. So the information was given to me from the department or to my office at the end of last year that the science was now saying that this species was indeed depleted. That's why as soon as I got that information, I worked very closely with the department to see what levers were available to me as a minister to make an immediate emergency, I guess for want of a better word, cut to the bag limit, and also to increase the size limit from 32 up to 35 for sand flathead. Which isn't actually an easy thing to do because, of course, proper process is that you consult. But I felt that with the information that was being presented to me, that there needed to be immediate action. So we found a way that I could do that. And, you know, now we have the opportunity, a little bit of breathing space where we can do the proper consultation and we can get all of that information in. We've had the science peer reviewed, so we're waiting for that information to come in. So it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, but had to pull that emergency lever really initially because of the severity of the situation. Now, for further explanation around what that actual line is and when it goes from depleting to depleted, I'll hand back to Dr. Dutton through you, Deputy Secretary.
Thank you, Minister, and through you. Our science work is all done in partnership through a long-standing agreement with the University of Tasmania, the Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies.
So at the end of last year, they compiled and it takes a while to pull this data together. You'd appreciate there's an extraordinary amount of science underneath this assessment. They pulled together a scalefish assessment across all of our scalefish species, which underpinned this review package. And it really reaffirmed the trend that we crossed that line, as the Minister indicated, from depleting to depleted, which is where really urgent action is required. And so there are 7 species that we put out for consultation, one of which calamari is depleting, but it's been the subject of quite a detailed consultation process for a number of years now. The others were at a point where we really need to take action pretty quickly. And so in the case of sand flathead, we also asked IMAS to model for us, and all this is on the nre-tasfishing.gov.tas website. We asked them to model for us what the scenarios were that would achieve that recovery. And so in order to go back to a sustainable fishing level, which we've set at 40% of that natural biomass, we believe that we can recover sand flathead to that level within 4 to 6 years by taking action. But obviously it varies from place to place. And look, it's pretty much a straight line correlation between population pressure and distribution. So the area that we've proposed, the no strict cuts, the 2 bag limit proposal is in the southeastern part of the sand flathead range. For the rest of Tasmania, it's a 5 flathead bag limit proposal. So it's not a severe reduction. It's still significant, but we think through those measures and through introducing the slot limit that I talked about, which would enable particularly females, because females grow faster than males in the sand flathead, to grow through faster, we'd achieve that recovery. Unlike other species, you really have to go to every species has got its own way of living, its own life history, if you like. And sand flathead, I am confident because it's not a recruitment limited fishery. There are lots and lots of young flathead out there coming into the fishery, but when they hit that 32 or now 35 centimetre line, they're fished out of the fishery. So I think within a few years of taking this action, we have the chance to recover the stock, which is a much more optimistic outlook than I have for certain species. For example, abalone, once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you very much. Could I just address the question? Sorry, Honourable Member, I've just got some information regarding the fishers who attended the sessions in Smithton. So 4 calamari fishers in Smithton, and I'm advised there were 5 in Stanley.
Okay.
Through Minister, you could also add that we did actually write to all of the commercial fishers in that area to let them know about the opportunity.
Yeah, and so I'm just being advised for your information that all the fishers in that area were also written to advise them of that opportunity.
They may not have got over out in their boats a lot, but anyway, one I spoke to certainly didn't seem to be aware of that.
Okay.
Just with regard to the salmon plan, I note that you're reviewing the Living Marine Resources Management Act 1995 and the Marine Farming Planning Act 1995. Can you update the committee as to what likely changes are to be made to those 2 acts, or what the stage of the process is at?
No, they are, and I could give an update. Yeah. Good to go. Yeah, good to go. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that question. I'll pass to the Acting Deputy Secretary.
I'm still liking that.
Keep promoting her over 2 days.
Paul Jason's really happy.
I'm going to be checking my pay packet.
Hopefully he's not watching.
I think he's busy. Yes, he's busy. I'm actually happy to be Deputy Secretary and talking to you here today. So, in terms of the Living Marine Resource Management Act, we've got a steering committee and we've started that process of review. Our plan is to release a white paper later this year which outlines some proposals for reform. And we're also considering whether there are some amendments to that Act that could improve it. But we're not at the stage of saying what we're going to be putting forward because the Minister will put out the white paper later this year. We did put out a discussion paper, we received feedback on that and we've been engaging. One of the things I would say is that we think that the timing of putting the white paper out later this year is ideal considering the amount of consultation we've been doing on the salmon plan and this important scalefish review. Yeah. We need to be able to ensure that people have the opportunity to engage because a bit of clear air. It's going to set start to set a vision and a framework for the Living Marine Resource Management Act, and we want to make sure we get that engagement. In terms of the review of the Marine Farming Planning Act, that is a commitment under the Salmon Plan, and the first stage will be to review to determine if there is a requirement for amendment, and then advice to go to the Minister about that. So, and that we believe that in terms of staging, that we would be doing a review in parallel with the Living Marine Resource Management Act, but that the Living Marine Resource Management Act comes first.
In terms of the Marine Farming Planning Act?
We're focusing first on the white paper for the Living Marine Resource Management Act, but we will be commencing a review of the other act in parallel. But we'll start that as an internal review and then go from there.
Could we, most of my questions have been answered, I think, but just, you said later this year. Can you be any more specific than that in terms of timelines for the white paper?
No, I think that's...
Okay. Thank you.
Hopefully not right on Christmas.
Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah, there is that.
I just know, I'm sorry, Ron.
No, you're still going. It's a different, keep going.
Yeah, again, still under the Salmon Plan, there's a decision to move from partial cost recovery to recovering the full costs of monitoring the industry from the 1st July this year, so very soon. I saw in the media there was some pushback from JBS about that. So how are you dealing with that? Are we going to see full cost recovery progressed regardless?
Yeah, well, you can understand that the industry may push back. I think, the reason that we know that this plan is really balanced is because pretty much everybody's unhappy with it. The idea of the plan was to lay out a vision for the future of the industry. It gives clarity to the industry and certainty about how we as a government expect it to operate and growth prospects that could be explored through rigorous planning processes. It aims to give community members confidence that their concerns have been heard, and that in response we're making it clear that we expect transparency, we want really good engagement, we want robust environmental performance. So I totally understand that some businesses are going to look at this plan and they could very well envision the worst case scenario and the impacts on them. Some in the community are quite loudly giving feedback that the plan hasn't gone far enough. So as I say, I think that we do have the balance right here. With regard to full cost recovery, this is something that has been a government policy for some time. It's not new. It hasn't just been launched at industry.
Well, it's supposed to start 1st July. And the question is, will it start then, regardless?
And so we have been working through a process with industry. It's been quite a detailed process with the Secretary and Deputy Secretary have been engaging directly with industry on that. And it's been very, very clear to them that, it will be going to full cost recovery and that will be happening on the 1st of July. So I can tell you that the industry currently pays annual environment and planning levies in the order of $2.5 million per annum, together with other transaction fees. And I can advise that when full cost recovery is applied, that levy amount is likely to more than double. But the particulars of this are all being worked out now between the department and with those major industry players. And the plan is the plan. This is the policy that our government has set out. We want it to be fair to, all sides, and, we've made it very clear.
Minister, what do you mean when you say the particulars are being worked out with industry? When we've got 3 weeks or less to have the particulars worked out, what are the particulars?
Well, through you, Minister, under the Living Marine Resource Management Act, there's a requirement to a specific legislative requirement that before a levy is put in place, that there's consultation with the fisheries body, and in this case, also because it's introducing the full cost recovery. We've had partial cost recovery because it's a shift. Engagement with the fishing body and industry is appropriate. Essentially, we're putting up the cost of management to cover the services which provide a benefit to the salmon industry within Tasmania, where it's solely for the salmon industry. Where it results in a cost burden to the government, which arises principally because of the salmon industry within Tasmania. So it's essentially about saying this is the proposal for cost recovery.
And so you can confidently say that all finfish farmers, growers, will pay the full cost recovery fees from the 1st of July.
That is the government's policy. It's been clearly laid out in the... I will finish. It's been clearly laid out in the plan, and I am advised that we are absolutely on target in that consultation to see that implemented on the 1st of July.
So how will we know as consumers that this is occurring after the 1st of July?
You'll provide advice.
We'll ask a question.
Yeah, you could ask a question. I actually haven't thought to that stage. Actually, letting you know, I just know that, that's the plan, the 1st of July, this is when we will be seeing full cost recovery, and, perhaps you might like to ask me a question on the floor.
And through you, Minister, we've identified and said in the past what the levies are. It's not the levy is made, and it's a matter of public record.
So on that, this is the thing, I'm just not sure about what the particulars are, you see, because if the levy's been clearly laid out, the industry players know what they're up for. Why are we having this pushback now when, for some time they would have known?
Look, why there's pushback, that's a matter for them. You would have to ask them why they're wanting to push back. And that's fine. They are well within their rights to ask questions in this space, and that's what's we've been working through. It's now coming to a conclusion, but obviously, you need to be respectful in this space. They know what the government policy is. They've had questions around it. We're answering those questions, and everyone is moving towards that 1st of July.
Okay. Sarah, did you...
Just to follow on from that, so, Minister, you've said that you'll be recovering more from the industry and there'll be greater returns to the community. Are you able to talk us through how that part will work? What are the returns to community? How will they be distributed? How does that part of the process work?
So it's two different bodies of work. Cost recovery is what we've been talking about. That's that 1st of July. Return to community is a separate body of work. We have started preliminary work on that. So looking at other jurisdictions, how does this happen in other places around the world, and that's work that. Is yet to come to fruition, so we'll be working through that. But our priority was to throw our resources at full cost recovery, and then we will continue on with our work for the return to the community. So it is quite a different concept to cost recovery, and we know that it's undertaken in other sectors and in jurisdictions who manage aquaculture. That's where we're working to.
Do you have a timeline for that?
For you, Minister, in your salmon plan, it's a near term, which is 3 months to 2 years, but
so in the action implementation of the salmon plan, the timing that we've put there is that it's a near term project. So near term means between 3 months and 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just go and sit on the salmon plan. Community engagement forums were held around Tasmania to enable, and I think this goes a bit talking about to enable community members and organisations to engage regularly and consistently in salmon planning and broader aquaculture and marine resource management. And it says, according to the document, these forums will ensure there is at least one engagement opportunity annually for communities in northern, southern, western Tasmania. So in that consultation, has there been any issues raised in terms of excluding particular areas from future finfish farming.
Through you, Minister.
Okay, I'll pass that to Deputy Secretary.
Through you, Minister. Ian and I did chair, all of them. We did do all of those sessions. It's fair to say that we got a range of opinions across different areas, and there was definitely some advocating that around inshore, offshore, and also whether people were particularly, were saying that they were advocating that they were not interested in having aquaculture in a particular area. We took that into account in terms of the advice to the Minister in terms of the salmon plan, in terms of the balanced approach that we're taking. So yes, there were definitely views, but I would note that we also had submissions and took into a comprehensive consultation process, and various views were put forward through that process, which informed our advice to the Minister.
So have any areas been identified to be excluded as not suitable in terms of the water area they're in, or the temperature of the water, the proximity to sensitive fish areas, like fish nurseries and that sort of thing?
You're going to have to refer that to the department.
So, Minister, there's two things that say the salmon plan under Priority Outcome 1 Sustainable Industry on page 10 outlines the government's policy around existing and future. So in terms of existing farms, it indicates that existing statutory processes, plans and rights will be honoured. But it recognises that there's significant public interest in inshore farming areas, and will continue to use statutory processes and policies intended to promote effective use of marine resources. In terms of new farms and further offshore farming, before the establishment of any new marine farming zone, planning proposals would be considered for a planning process, which includes environmental impact statements. And it also outlines that the government, in looking at proposals for offshore and outside of existing marine farming areas, looks to mitigate and minimise overlap with incompatible cultural, environmental, social, commercial uses, located away from reefs, including rocky shorelines, and further away from land. So the policy sets, the plan sets the framework for existing and future. A particular initiative that was put, is in the plan, in particular, is through progression of statutory planning processes for relevant marine farming development plans across the state. There'll be a review of to remove finfish farming from zones where the area is not subject to an existing marine farming lease, and we're going to commence with the Furneaux Islands Marine Farming Development Plan. So just to take you through that again, so this is a planning process to remove finfish, and the intent is to put forward through that proposal, which will be subject to consultation, finfish farming from zones where the area is not subject to an existing marine farming lease, commencing with the Furneaux Islands. In terms of the question around, suitability, there is an extensive planning process that is already in place under the Marine Farming Planning Act in terms of development of salmon plans, which includes an environmental impact statement. That process is robust and considers the factors that you have outlined.
Including the impacts of climate change?
In terms of an environmental impact statement, that could be one of the factors that would be, I'm not sure, Ian, sorry, environmental impact statement could.
Absolutely.
For you, Minister, is that all
also,
right? For you, Minister?
There's work by IMAS on climate.
Oh, yes, go. Is that for So do you want Ian to go to that?
Do you want?
Yeah. Particularly as we know the impacts of climate change are very real, and we're seeing rising sea level. I see temperatures in many parts. We're seeing different fish, wild fish, in our waters, particularly in the north, that have not normally been there. So how is that assessed in terms of assessing the planning process, if you like?
Through you, Minister, absolutely. Climate is fundamental to everything that we do in our planning and our management of fisheries and aquaculture in Tasmania. We have a long-standing partnership with both IMS and CSIRO. There's actually a series of really useful work that's come out of the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation guidance on climate adaptation, but that is factored into a series of scenarios we've already done. We did a preliminary analysis about 18 months ago with CSIRO where we looked at finfish suitability around Tasmania. We identified certain areas. You'll note that the only area, for example, in the plan that identifies a new growth opportunity is around Storm Bay, where we think that's the major climate opportunity for offshore finfish farming in Tasmania currently. But there is a lot of work underway around not just the ability of fish to survive within a warmer system, but also the genetics that underpin aquaculture that may enable us to have more temperature. We have some of the most temperature-tolerant salmon in the world in Tasmania.
I understand that. Okay, we might draw this item to a close. And
I've got some other...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm getting short of time.
Well, that's better.
I don't know what to tell you about that. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. Given Tasmania has the highest proportion of boat owners of any state in the country, recreational fishing is estimated to be worth $270 million to gross state product annually and support 2,500 jobs around the state. Can you tell us what's being done to provide or make recreational sea fishing more accessible?
Thank you very much for your question and your obvious interest in the recreational fishing sector. This government has been funding a range of initiatives to support recreational fishing across Tasmania, from the deployment of 4 fish aggregation devices off the east coast, to rolling out the Flathead for the Future program and supporting our fish care volunteers. In fact, it was great to meet some of our fish care volunteers at AgFest, a very enthusiastic group of people who really do quite an outstanding job. We're also delivering through our $2 million Better Fishing Fund announced in the 21-22 budget. This grant program provides opportunities for community groups, fishing clubs, schools, councils, individuals to upgrade or build new recreational fishing facilities. So that could include pontoons, jetties, fish cleaning tables, toilets near fishing facilities and steps and walkways. The program's already delivered great outcomes for Tasmanian communities, such as improvements to the lighting and water supply to cleaning tables at the Bellreef Pier and Narracoopa Jetty, improved radio communications for people fishing at Eaglehawk Neck, improved access for fishers through the installation of a new floating fishing pontoon at Shipwrights Point and installation of a new fish cleaning station at York Cove in Georgetown. We've also funded new equipment for the Swansea Primary School's Sustainable Fishing Program and the RecLink Fishing Program to support social inclusion. I recently approved funding for a second round of projects which will support St Helens Marine Rescue to install a real-time camera and webcam for fishers to check weather conditions, the West Coast Council to install 2 fish cleaning stations at Macquarie Heads, and Georgetown Council to install fishing facilities at Low Head Breakwater. So the next round of Better Fishing grants is now open and it will close on the 30th of June. Funding will be available for both large projects up to $150,000 and small projects up to $15,000. And I'd certainly encourage recreational fishers to engage with their councils, community groups or local fishing clubs for them to consider lodging an application so we can continue to support enhanced shore-based fishing infrastructure for our fishers in regional areas across the state.
Okay, we'll move on.
No, I've got some questions. Yeah. Should I just read the questions in so you can move through it? Is that the easiest way? Because
Just start and see how we go.
All right.
Anything we don't get to, we'll just have to leave open.
And I'd ask the doctor, is it Morgian or Morgan?
Can you ask the question through me?
Through the Minister, I just want to know, well, I was going to ask it correctly, Joe. I don't know what the word is, Morgan or Morgian skate.
Depends what part of the state you come from.
So I just want
Morgian or Morgian?
Thanks, Mr.
I've heard both of them.
I have. I use Morgian, but
Yeah, I use Morgian as well.
After the G, so you
Yeah,
should.
all right, so I'll go with the Morgian one. So I wanted to correct it first before I ask you. Through you, Minister, there does seem to, well, it's actually described as the rarest marine animal. It's the thylacine of the sea sort of thing, and it's other scientists have described it as the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
And even back in Dr. Neville Barrett from IMAS in 2013 did some work in this space, but there does seem to be conflicting opinions. The West Coast Recreational Association has been taking a keen interest in this, as its focus is all about maintaining traditional and recreational activities in its local area. As a result, I'd welcome the government's response to these two questions. Given the concerns submitted by community members relating to the impact closures of Macquarie Harbour would have on the West Coast community, and in view of the comprehensive Morgian Skate Spatial Management Protection proposal that encompasses recreational netting, will the Minister give an undertaking that the IMAS netting and catch composition for the years 2013 to 2022 inclusive be provided to the committee, or be provided? That's something to think about. The second one, with the growing concern about the marine environment in the Macquarie Harbour and the role of the Morgian skate as an indicator species, can the IMAS netting and catch composition data, that I understand has not been publicly available since 2019, and now be made available with interpretation if necessary to better inform our understanding of what may be occurring? And can the recovery strategy be reassessed in conjunction with WCRA community proposal for a sustainable recreational netting? I'm happy to forward these to you because they're a bit long. And then there's another perspective as well. We've all received letters from the Honourable Tanya Plibersek, Minister for Environment and Water, from a variety of interested entities and well-resourced environmental groups. The three questions there would, with specific requests to the Tasmanian Government to, one, work with Hydro Tasmania to adjust river flows, particularly from the Gordon River, to maximise dissolved oxygen recovery and minimise the risk of low oxygen events. Secondly, immediately commence development of a comprehensive recovery plan to give the Morgian skate the best chance of long-term survival. And three, there does seem to be a natural difference of opinions and a possible conflict with the interests of the fin fishers industry operations in the Macquarie Harbour. How does the government plan to resolve this dilemma, and what resource are you intending to allocate to this problem? I was interested back in 2013, the IMAS, Dr. Neville Barrett, said that there is... We are highly aware that the activity in the harbour, as some people see it, is a highly impacted estuary from the mining activities. However, it is but the area is a site of fin fish farm expansion and pressure from recreational fishing. So back then, IMAS identified that there was pressure from the salmon farming as well.
Okay, so a lot of complicated questions there. Primarily at the front, I need to say that this is actually a matter for the Environment Minister, for Minister Jentzsch. It comes under his portfolio. But what I can say from my perspective as Primary Industries Minister, where obviously I intersect in that fishing space. So there were those interim management actions to restrict recreational gill netting activities in Macquarie Harbour, and that action was taken in response to the identified risks to the critically endangered Morgian skate. Now again, that was a situation where a decision had to be made, and we did work with West Coast fishers to find a way that we could pull a lever to put in place some strategies for protection of the skate, whilst giving them some opportunity to continue in a limited way with how they fish. So that's my side of this. The other side of the McGeehan Skate, and a lot of the questions that you're asking are actually for the Environment Minister.
Okay.
But I can tell you actions taken to date include the EPA's determination on nitrogen outputs for the salmon industry in the harbour and the implementation of the gill netting restrictions, which is in my space for recreational and commercial fishers, and that happened late last year. I'm also advised that expert technical working groups have now been formed and future conservation actions, including exploration of environmental remediation in Macquarie Harbour and off-site conservation management opportunities will be considered in the development of a conservation action plan. And that plan will set out coordinated and prioritised strategies for the recovery of the species and will be finalised later this year.
Thank you, Minister. My concern with this one is that it's my understanding that catch composition data for recreational fishers with the Maugean skate is minimal catch, and it seems as though that they're being used as that argument is being used as a reason for the plan, when really the amount of catch the fishermen have down that area have very little impact on the skate population. And it seems as though there's more chance it is to do with the actual flow and the oxygen in the harbour. And so I would like to be able to see what the catch of from 2013 to 2022, what those catch data is that you would be basing this plan on. So would that be available?
So I think the association that the questions that are coming from that West Coast Association have been put into the submission process through for the review of the scalefish. So it's really good that they've done that. I actually went and met with them in Queenstown, and they did step through with me the concerns that they have, and I also undertook to take their concerns back to the department, and that would be looked at and considered in the process of reviewing the scalefish rules. So those submissions, that's only just closed. We're now going through the process of going through all those submissions in detail, and we'll be able to better respond when we've had that time to look at those submissions.
Okay, and my question again is that would mean the IMAS netting and catch composition data for the years 2013 to 2022 would be made available? I'll let you take that back to others, but...
Yeah. Okay, so... so that what you're asking for is actually IMAS's data. So it's not our data, it's IMAS's data with specific catch data. So that would actually need to be released by IMAS.
So I want to understand, with your recreational plan, you're making this... How does that work when there's data available from IMAS, which the government supports, I would imagine, doing this work, and they're basing their condition for the plan and on the catch from recreational fishers, and yet that information is not available to see that weighs up, that it makes sense?
So what I have fed back into the department is the direct concerns that were relayed to me when I went to that meeting with a number of representatives, including some from West Coast Fishers, and I have asked the department to, consider what they are putting forward, and that whole body of work is part of the review of the scalefish rules. So the department has their information. We have the information that's been given by the West Coast Fishers, and all of that is taken into account, and then the department will bring that advice to me as the Minister.
Okay, thanks, Minister, but I can see the frustration with the community down there when the data has not been made available about what impact that group and the catch has on this species. And it seems as though that they may be bearing the brunt of something else that's happening in the harbour with the skate.
Our Deputy Secretary just has a quick comment to make.
Through you, Minister, there was an interim report released by IMAS on the 2nd of May 2023, which is publicly available. It has information around this Maugean skate population status and monitoring. I'm not sure that it has all of the details that you've indicated today, but that will be a matter for IMAS and capacity for West Coast Recreational Fishers Association to directly contact IMAS about that. What we can say is that the Environment Minister is considering through the Conservation Action Management Plan the multifaceted issues in this complex environmental space and looking at all interactions. And that's, although it sits in the Minister for Environment space, as the Minister has said, that Conservation Action Management Plan is the appropriate mechanism to understand the best management actions for the skate in the harbour.
Okay. Any others on that? Otherwise, we might have our break now.
Just on that, can I then forward some of the other questions didn't get a chance to get answered? Can I forward those on so they can
not without permission of the Minister.
So the Minister, the other questions I've had there, can they be forwarded to you so that they can be looked at by your staff?
You need to read them out so that she knows what she's agreeing to.
Okay. I just did read them all out.
Oh, these are the same questions you've
The
just...
whole the 5 questions that I read with Tanya Plebiscite, those sort of things as well. So
the problem we've got is that some of them are not, they're not for me. So I can't accept that because they're not in my output. They're for the Minister for the Environment. So I can't accept that on behalf of another minister that's, outside of the output. Is the advice that I'm being given.
I don't know what time Committee B are doing environment. Maybe you could flick those ones through.
yeah, and they'll probably get the same response. Okay.
Yeah, if they're under that portfolio.
Well, it is under the Minister for Environment.
Yes, maybe you should send them through to Committee B. I don't know what time they're doing environment.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move. Oh, actually, we'll have our break and we'll come back.
They're not doing environment.
We are running behind time. We'll come back to 3.1 biosecurity and product integrity.
Thank you.
Yeah.